You are so brave. I wish my generals were as brave as you.
Ein Ziel gestrebt, nämlich die 30 Parteien aus Deutschland hinauszufegen.
One line, intercepted at 3:09 a.m. Judgment sleeps underground. The signal originated from deep beneath the Reich Chancellery, Berlin's corpse still smoldering days after Hitler's confirmed death. No known Nazi channels remained active. The war was over, but the encryption wasn't Enigma. And the man tied to that call sign, Rochus Misch, was supposed to be dead. OSS Command didn't hesitate. Deploy Ghost Line 7. Target, Bunker Remnant. Objective, intercept the source. Because this wasn't about Hitler anymore. This was about the receiver on the other end of the line. And what it was waiting for. Just before dawn, on what should have been the end of the war in Europe, a British Y station in southern England picked up something that shouldn't have existed, a coded transmission from central Berlin. Its origin beneath the Reich Chancellery. The signal was tagged with a legacy frequency only known to Hitler's inner circle. The message contained just 4 German words. Das Urteil schläft unterirdisch. Judgment sleeps underground. Decoded in 13 minutes. Disbelieved in 2. The Third Reich had officially collapsed 8 days prior. Hitler was confirmed dead, but the signal's embedded frequency was active and verified. The name tied to the frequency, Rochus Misch, Hitler's personal telephonist and bodyguard. Last known alive in the bunker, declared missing, presumed executed. If he had survived and was transmitting, something had been left behind. Theories spread fast. Some in Allied intelligence feared the message was a signal activation. Others thought it might be a final failsafe, a psychological or chemical weapon, a hidden archive, or worse, a spiritual cultist trigger. An unmarked OSS cell operating in Berlin was activated under code Sigma Veil. Their orders: intercept the source, terminate transmission, and assess potential response capability. No flags, no questions, no media. Containment above retrieval. Hitler may have been dead, but the message had just gone live. Berlin's veins were open and bleeding. The Soviets had pushed into the city's heart. Shells still rocked the skyline. Fires rolled down avenues like weather. In that chaos, Ghost Line 7 didn't need stealth. They needed camouflage. The team embedded under the guise of a German Red Cross medical retrieval unit. The uniforms were real, looted weeks earlier. Their papers, forged at MI6's Special Operations Office, bore Himmler's signature and a fabricated Reich medical ID. Zentralkommando 444/B. They moved with silence, not speed. Their target was a collapsed tunnel entrance 60 meters west of Wilhelmstrasse. Soviet snipers watched from rooftops. SS diehards still roamed like ghosts. Everything was lethal. Ghost Line 7 carried no visible weapons. Their gear was tucked into morphine boxes, false bottom stretchers, and one specially modified oxygen tank, housing Charon, a burst jammer that could blind Berlin's inner frequency net for 27 minutes. No radios, no chatter, only tap signals. Captain Alan Thorne's orders were brutal and simple. Intercept the signal source. Disable. Do not engage unless necessary. If you see Misch, extract if cooperative. Eliminate if triggered. We don't leave with questions. By 4:32, the team passed the second checkpoint. Inside their lead medic's case was a steel cylinder marked chlorine. It wasn't gas. It was a burn code canister, meant to erase every trace of what they were about to uncover. Because if Misch was alive, he wasn't transmitting alone. The shaft was narrow, 1 meter wide, scorched from an internal blast. It was once a power conduit leading from the Reich Chancellery's administrative wing into the central bunker's engineering corridor. Now, it was nothing but charred brick, twisted steel, and rotting air. At 0446, Ghost Line 7 initiated the drop. Each operator descended blind. No lights. Only timed rope taps and the ticking metronome of Captain Thorne's breathing. Petrov was the first to touch bottom, sweeping with a portable Geiger probe, radiation negative. But the air was thick, metallic, as if it had been sealed for days, and suddenly exhaled. Behind a collapsed bulkhead, they located a secondary corridor. Burned signage still clung to the wall in German. Kommunikation. Sektor 3. Zugang nur für Personal des Führers. Translation. Communications. Sector 3. Authorized for Führer personnel only. The walls were scorched, but the corridor wasn't entirely collapsed, and the signal tracer Keller carried was glowing, strong. At 5:01, the Charon burst jammer activated. A 27-minute veil dropped over a 400-meter radius. No outbound transmissions, no inbound tracking, just static. Thorne gave the order, weapons hot, masks on, no noise past this point. Behind the final door, sealed in rusted steel, was relay chamber B37, the origin of the signal. Inside was expected to be a corpse. Instead, they would find a machine still talking and a man still listening. The steel door to relay B37 creaked open at 5:13 a.m. Inside was heat, not from fire, but from machinery. A console glowed faint green in the corner. Still running, still transmitting. It wasn't a German Enigma or Lorenz system. The design was unfamiliar. Non-standard paneling, stripped casing, strange engravings on the copper interface. No SS registry, no Reich markings, just a serial code etched by hand. Gate/1933-B, Prophet code line active. The signal was looping, short, pulsed, rhythmic. Matthews, the team's linguist, stepped forward. He froze. "It's not a message," he said. "It's a pattern." Then someone coughed from the dark. In the back of the chamber, slumped in the shadows, was a man in a tattered SS uniform, Rochus Misch. Gaunt, eyes sunken, still alive, he was whispering, barely audible beneath the drone of the console. Keller recorded the phrases as they came. Judgment sleeps underground. The third voice is rising. The tomb hums when it's near. Not all bodies burn. The console suddenly flared. Briefly, lights pulsed. The relay antenna behind it began rotating. Thorne moved forward and yanked the circuit breaker. The transmission stopped. Then, another pulse. Not from the room, from the receiver. Keller's signal sniffer beeped. The machine was being answered, from outside the bunker, somewhere east of Minsk. Matthews stepped back, pale. "This isn't broadcasting, it's sinking." Thorne stared at Misch, who simply looked up and said, "He told me the Reich was just the rehearsal. The gate is real." Then the lights flickered, and a hum began rising from beneath the floor. At 0519, as the hum inside relay B37 intensified, Captain Thorne issued the silent uplink code, Firewatch. Yellow translation, situation escalating. Airborne overwatch required, ground assets compromised. 47 kilometers west of Berlin, 2 RAF Mosquito fighter bombers banked low under cloud cover. Loaded with bunker-piercing payloads and modified airburst munitions, their objective was final strike authority, denial, not recovery. But the relay's jamming field distorted outbound comms. Keller managed a burst transmit via shielded coax, coded as Object alive, device active, second signal confirmed. Back in the bunker, the noise grew unbearable. The console began printing out reams of paper, glyphs instead of letters, spirals, symbols, mathematical notations that didn't belong to any known Axis code base. Petrov reached down and found a drawer of steel cylinders beneath the desk. Inside, burned photographs, a melted silver badge, and one Polaroid still intact. It showed a girl, no older than 12, standing barefoot in the woods. Scrawled on the back, "The Gift, Berghof, October 43. Suddenly, the relay cut out. The power died. The humming stopped, but Misch kept talking. He watches from the hollow star. The gate responds to names. They buried the truth where no one would pray. Outside, the RAF wings circled. One final order from command would greenlight the strike. Inside, Thorne made his own decision. Scramble what's left. Prepare to torch this place. Whatever was happening, the airstrike wouldn't be enough, because something in that room wasn't technology. It was invitation. At 5:24, as Ghostline 7 began preparing to extract the coded printouts and disable the console for good, a flicker of motion flashed across the outer corridor camera. Grainy, distorted. Petrov hissed, "Movement! North Hall!" The Karen jammer crackled. Signal noise surged. Contact. 3 Waffen-SS holdouts, clad in patchwork field gear and chemically stained trench coats, slipped into the lower tunnel. Each one carried obsolete MP40s, yet moved with a purpose that didn't match desperation. Their eyes were wide, unblinking. These weren't random stragglers. They were guarding something. Petrov dropped the first with a suppressed double tap. The second shouted something unintelligible, then hurled a phosphor flare down the hall. White fire licked the walls, scattering the team into cover. The third lunged into the chamber's mouth before Thorne drove a knife into his ribs. Fast, clinical, final. In the aftermath, silence returned, but not relief. Matthews was burned across the shoulder. Keller's device had melted halfway. And Misch? He hadn't moved. He just stared at the smoldering flare and whispered, "They never left. They just changed uniforms." Thorne gave the signal. "Load charges, one here, one under the antenna base." The team had 4 minutes to clear the blast radius. The final order was simple. We bury the signal. And whatever followed it here. But even as they moved, the ink on the console kept bleeding across the pages. New symbols, new coordinates, something still listening. The room reeked of hot metal and ash. Thorne gave one last look at Misch, still sitting, still murmuring incoherently. His eyes had glassed over. His lips moved, but no one wanted to listen anymore. Matthews, injured but lucid, slipped the last feed strip from the console and whispered, "This isn't code. It's ritual." Petrov lit the first thermite charge beneath the transmission core. Its ignition hissed like acid chewing into bone. The second was planted beneath the antenna's junction cables, already glowing red. As the timer began counting down from 120, Thorne approached Misch. "Anything you haven't said yet? Now's the time." Misch looked up. His last clear words were, "You killed the voice." But not the echo. They left him there. Ghostline 7 began exfil through a secondary tunnel. Petrov on point, Matthews limping between Thorne and Keller. At 5:31, the chamber lit up. The twin thermite charges ignited in unison, flooding relay B-37 in a pillar of white flame. The signal equipment collapsed in seconds. The antenna fused into slag. The ceiling cracked. Flame rushed up through the vent shaft like a scream from below. But even before the blast fully took, Keller's frequency monitor buzzed, just once. A final ping. The relay was destroyed. But a mirror frequency from outside Berlin, answered. The same cadence, the same pulse. Petrov shouted, "We're not alone." We never were. And then the tunnel behind them caved in. 3 survivors, 1 burned, 1 bleeding, 1 shaking with the realization they may have silenced the wrong voice. Ghost Line 7 reached the surface just as Soviet artillery resumed its crawl across the city. No debrief, no medical convoy. They blended into the ruins with their evidence hidden in iodine-wrapped bandages and false field kits. The team was extracted 2 days later under the guise of a captured Wehrmacht medical patrol. Matthews died during exfil. Petrov vanished during an unsanctioned handoff in Prague. Last seen boarding a train with a sealed envelope marked Saxon Protocol. Only Thorne and Keller remained. They delivered the burned transcripts, the girl's photo, and the printed glyphs to a black archive known only as Vault 7, somewhere in the Swiss Alps. Days later, a restricted CIA file was updated. Sigma Vale. Operation completed. Primary site destroyed. External response detected. Unknown source. Pending classification. The final line of the entry simply read, "Echo not terminated. Signal may have been redundant." In the months that followed, Sigma Vale was buried, classified beyond top secret, sealed under Cold War obfuscation. Ghost Line 7 was never acknowledged. No medals, no records, just a brief internal cable. Berlin's voice has gone quiet. For now. But something never added up. The coordinates hidden in the glyphs pointed not to Germany, but to the Argentine Andes, near a known Nazi escape corridor. Another antenna, another relay, possibly another gate. Thorne retired into silence. Keller left military service and disappeared into a private lab in Norway, where he built a Faraday cage beneath his home. Every year on May 8th at 3:09 a.m., he still hears something, just once. A faint pulse, a single phrase, the same as before. Judgment sleeps underground. But now, something wants it awake.